Hi. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about something that I wish we talked more about. Um, and I kind of understand why we don't. And I think the reason we don't talk as much about this topic as we might is because native English speakers are often speakers of only English. Native English speakers often don't speak second languages or third languages. They're much less likely to speak a second or a third language than is somebody from basically any other country, from a country that speaks any other language as its main language, right? So as a result, there are a lot of blind spots that native English speakers have, and then they become teachers and they create curriculum and they create academies, and um, there are certain prejudices that just get built into these structures because these native English speakers just don't know what it's like to be a learner of a foreign language. And one of those things is that I don't think we talk enough about different styles of conversation that happen among people from different cultures. And it's something that I always find really striking. Um, and I always just want to tell students this because I often have students who speak incredibly well, and they've just gotten a new job working for an American company, for a North American company, and they're suddenly forced to have to socialize online, perhaps with North Americans. And they often express frustration or a feeling of insecurity that they think their English isn't as good as they thought it was. They thought their English was pretty good, and then suddenly they're surrounded by these native English speakers and they think, oh, actually, my English isn't as good as I thought it was. And what I want to say to them, and I want to say to you, if that's the case for you, is that it might not be you. It may be just that you are in an environment where the socializing, the style of socializing among the people that you're surrounded with by is different from the way it is in your in your home country, in your native language. And I'm always struck by this. And I've become more and more, I've noticed this more and more the more that I spend time with Spanish speakers. I have family in Argentina. I speak Spanish and I watch Argentinian radio. I would say I watch it because there's a channel that has a video feed. I love watching this channel. And it's really just apparent to me. It's just apparent how different our socializing styles are. And I can only really speak about Argentina, for example. It's the country, and maybe Spain, but not really. But I can say that in Argentina, the way people socialize is very different than the way people socialize in the US, in Canada. And I shouldn't generalize about those places either. But there tend to be some things that just happen very differently. And I notice that when I'm interacting with my students from Poland, Russia, Croatia, Bermuda, I mean, from many different places, Brazil, um, there are UAE, the United Arab Emirates. There seem to be styles of conversation that are similar among non-native English speakers that are different from the way native English speakers interact with each other. It's almost like there's a global way of talking English among people who aren't native English speakers, and then there's the way that native English speakers speak in English, or people who learned English and live in America, but not even necessarily, particularly people who grew up in families where English was spoken, or who grew up in the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, England, right? One of the biggest things I notice is that one of the ways that native English speakers tend to interact with each other is they are very it's very common that they seem to like to talk about the past, what happened, what did you do yesterday, and the future, what are you going to do tomorrow? And they kind of avoid the now, the present moment a little bit. They struggle a little bit more than I've found people from other countries do about talking about what's actually happening in the present moment. They kind of move past that. That's a huge generalization, but it's something I've noticed. I may be completely wrong, but it's just something that I observe. That they like to talk about the past and they like to talk about the future and their plans for the future and what has happened in the past, things that have happened, what they did, what they thought, and what they're going to do and what they think so that they can do something. In the present, they may talk more about what they think, but they don't necessarily always have language to talk about or want to talk about how they feel in the present moment. And that's not the case with people from other countries. It's just not the case. In other countries, you could say the opposite, maybe. I'm sure there are examples of countries who do the exact opposite. The future is really uncertain. The past is full of war and economic insecurity. And so the only thing, like the thing we're all experiencing is the present. So they get really good about talking about the present. There's some cultures that are really good at talking about philosophy and psychology, and things like, are really good at philosophizing or are really good. There are people from those countries who are really good at describing subtle feelings or thoughts, or they like to take on the nuances of things that are happening, that they observe happening. So that's one thing. And another thing that you may notice among native English speakers, a tendency that they have, is to ask questions. They are a people who I don't really like this. I prefer it. I wish it weren't this way, but I much prefer other ways of interacting, honestly. But it is very common for some, not all, native English speakers to ask a lot of questions and to sort of, sometimes speaking with somebody can feel a little bit like an interview. So, and that is just a sort of, is a polite way of interacting in some circles, in many circles. If you don't know the person well, especially, it may be very, you shouldn't be surprised if you don't know the person, if the way they interact with you initially is by asking you a lot of questions. And it's a way that we show other people that we're interested in them and that we care about what they have to say. And I think it comes from a characteristic or a tendency, a habit that we're a little bit shy about talking about ourselves unless we're specifically asked about something. And that's not the case with people from other countries. And I remember when I first moved to Argentina, it was a very different, it was a totally different social environment. And I really enjoyed the fact that people just spoke when they felt called to speak. And there were people that spoke a lot and there were people that rarely spoke. But it was up to you to decide when you wanted to speak. Nobody was going to call on you. Nobody was going to call on you as to choose you. No one was going to say, what do you think? I mean, they might say, what do you think? But you could always say, oh, I don't have an opinion about this. But they wouldn't necessarily, especially in a group, say, oh, and where are you? Oh, so you're from the US. Like, tell us a little bit about that, which is something that could very easily happen in a dinner party in the US, for example, where the host trying to bring the guests in might sort of, speak directly to somebody at the table and ask them a very specific question that they might feel rude not answering. So so those are just two things that I just wanted to bring up, and we can talk more about that. It's a big topic. That's a big topic. And I just think it's really important that we recognize it, we mention it, and we talk about it, because otherwise non-native English speakers, people for whom English is not their first language, can feel like they're doing something wrong, or they can feel less comfortable among native English speakers, and they can think it's about their English when it's not at all about their English. It's actually just about the vibe or the energy, the way of interacting that is happening in that group of people. And I've been generalizing here, and this is not to say that it's this way everywhere, and it tends to not be like this the more you get to know people. So I'm basically speaking about what happens when you first get to know people in English, in English speaking countries. And it changes very quickly, and it's different in groups, big groups, small groups. Depends whether you're interacting at work or whether you're interacting in a store or whether it's a family member of somebody you know. All those things influence how this plays out. But there's definitely something to be said for different cultural styles around conversation. And I'd love to keep talking about this. Let me know if this is something that you've experienced. I'd love to hear if you have any stories about this. Leave your story in the comments below. Join our newsletter, which is a little more of a space where we can keep talking about these things. And thanks for showing up. Thanks for being here. Not thanks for showing up. Thanks for dropping by, stopping in, and watching these videos. And please subscribe. If you like it, give it a like. And see you next week. And maybe even see you later in the week. All right. Have a good one. Have a good week. Have a good one is an American phrase. It's not something they use in England, I learned. So I try not to use it too much. It means something different there. Has sexual undertones. So I don't recommend practicing that one. So have a good day. Have a good afternoon, as opposed to having a good one. And that's how, there you go. Have a good day. Have a good week. Have a great afternoon. Whatever. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.